Hi, my name is Bibek Adhikari. I am an English instructor. In today's class, we are going to solve the grammar portion of Unit 9, that is the past tense. So, let's begin. So, in this class, we shall learn about the past tense and their 9 uses. We shall, in fact, study about the 4 past tenses and their 9 uses. So, that would be our study topic: 4 past tenses and 9 uses, correct? Before that, let's understand about the past. Why should we study the past tense? That is my question. Now, let's understand that. The past is very important. It's where we are all from. We need to use past tense to describe the most of our personal experiences. So while talking about personal experience, we need past tense as well as things that have happened to other people. So while talking about things that happen to other people, right? Things that happened to other people, we need the past tense. In fact, there's an entire academic field devoted to studying the past. Do you know that? That's an entire subject that is just devoted to study the past, and that is called, what is the study of past called? It is called history. There's an entire subject. If you go to a university, you would find history as a separate department under the Department of Humanities and Arts. So people have done masters in history, PhD in history, you see. They have written dissertations and all that academic stuff. That's why past is very much significant. But language about past event is not just found in history text. By reading history, it's impossible to learn about the past tense, right? So many academic texts and lectures, including ones in the IELTS and TOEFL, as well as your English class in grade 8, 9, and 10, they use past tenses to discuss things that have happened before right now. So we shall be discussing about things that happened before right now. So right now, when right now is gone, it becomes past, right? So we use the past tense. There are 4 types of past tenses and 9 total ways to use the past tense. Understanding these tenses and uses can really help you with academic reading, listening, speaking, and writing. So all different 4 sets of skills are improved. Now, one by one, I'll go over each past tense and their uses with examples in this class, right? So by learning the past tense, you'll improve your reading skills, you will improve your writing skills too, you will also improve your listening skills, and finally the speaking skills. As you know, there are 4 dimensions of English language learning. How many dimensions are there? 4 of English language learning, and they are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. All these 4 dimensions are improved just by learning the past tense. So we'll see how that, right? So let's start. Let's begin with the simple past. As the name suggests, it is very simple indeed. Let me write the form first. So what is the form? Take the base verb and change the word into past tense. So take the base verb, and change it into past tense. So make a past tense base verb, right? Usually this means adding ed in the end of the word. However, much like simple present tense, there are a lot of irregular verbs with different past tense forms. So for regular verbs, we can simply add ed in the end and make it past verb, but for irregular verbs, it is not possible because irregular verbs, they follow a different rule. Now let's go to the uses. Where are past tense, the simple past tense used? So use number 1 is actions completed in the past. So whenever we talk about the actions that are completed in the past, we use the simple past tense. So for actions that are completed in the past, we use the simple past tense. Let me show you how by giving you an example. So here's an example. So let me write this. The scientist conducted an experiment. They thought the experiment would prove their theory. So this is an example of simple past tense. Let's find the verbs. Conducted, thought, and we have would, right? 3 verbs. First one is a regular verb made by adding ed, while thought is an irregular verb, so there's no rule like that. The past form of will is would, whereas the past form of think is thought, right? So the the scientist conducted, the past form of conduct is conducted, an experiment. They thought the experiment would prove their theory, right? So what happens in this sentence? In this sentence, we talk about actions that happened in the past, right? In fact, this is something called series of actions. So it's not just one action that happened in the past. There are many actions. So first action followed by another, followed by another. This is how it works. We have first action followed by another action, right? So two actions are parallelly working. The scientists conducted an experiment. They thought the experiment would prove their theory. So we are talking about actions that happened in the past. For this, we use a simple past tense. Now let's go to another form of tense. Another form of tense is called past continuous. What is it called? It is called past continuous. So the form is pretty easy. It is the past form of to be, right? It is the past form of to be. So generally it is was or were followed by verb ing. Followed by what? Followed by verb ing. So that is the form. Now let's understand about the uses. Where is this tense used? The first use is describing a past action that hasn't been completed yet. So while talking about a past action that hasn't been completed yet, we use the past continuous tense. We'll learn how that is done. So let me give you an example. Describing a past action that hasn't been completed yet. Example: the students were talking while teacher was not in the class, right? So this can be one example. The students were talking while the teacher was not in the class. So something was going on. You see, continuous action that happened in the past. So the students were talking while the teacher was not in the class. The students were doing something while the teacher was not there. So that is the use number first. Now let's go to use number 2. Describing a past action that was interrupted by another action. So while describing a past action that was interrupted by another action, past action, we use the past tense. So we'll see how that is done. Let me write an example for you. The radio station was broadcasting music when the music was interrupted by an important announcement. So let me write you another example. Let's call it examples. I was trying to sleep when I heard a knock at my door. So let's find out the tenses. The radio station was broadcasting music when the music was interrupted by an important announcement. I was trying to sleep when I heard a knock at my door. So something was going on continuously, you see, and it was interrupted by another action. So the radio station was broadcasting music, and then all of a sudden it was interrupted by an important announcement. So that is why we call it interrupted continuous action. I was trying to sleep when I heard a knock at my door. So you heard the knock at your door, so you could not sleep. You were trying to sleep. That's why we call this interrupted continuous action. What do we call it? We call it interrupted continuous action. So while describing about interrupted continuous action, we actually use the past continuous tense. Very good. Now let's go to the third use. The third use that we have is when describing two past events that took place at the same time. So while describing about two past events that took place at the same time, the tense is used to describe the longer of the two events. So choose longer of the two events and use past continuous tense. So past continuous tense is used for the longer while describing or the longer of the two events. You can use simple past for the shorter event. You can also use past perfect for the shorter event, you see. So let me write one example first. Examples here. Marco Polo contacted Chinese merchants and leaders while he was traveling the world. You see, now I want you to find the shorter and the longer event. For longer event, let's write L, and for shorter event, let's write S. So was traveling is the longer event while contacted is the shorter event, correct? Now this is how it is done. For the shorter event we use, what do we use? For the shorter event we use simple past tense, while for the longer we use past continuous tense, you see. So that is how it is done. Marco Polo contacted Chinese merchants. So that is an event and that is very short. Contacting some person is a short event. And the leaders, merchant and leaders, while he was traveling the world and his main mission was, he was traveling the world. I can give you another example. She burned herself while she was cooking dinner. So while cooking dinner, the cooking process is the longer of the events, while burning oneself is obviously the shorter event, because one cannot burn oneself for a long time. That is both grammatically and semantically incorrect. You see, for longer event we use the past continuous tense, and for the shorter one we use the simple past tense. Easy as that. Now let's go to the fourth use, describing a past action that took place in a specific time period and may have continued afterwards. So does it make any sense? If it does not, do not worry, I'll help you. Describing a past action that took place in a specific time period and may have continued afterwards. Let me write you an example. The science team was conducting, I'm not using were because science team, I'm using them as a singular noun. The science team was conducting research as recently as last month. So the science team was conducting research. Something was going on, in a specific time period and may have continued afterwards. We don't know. So last month something was going on. Science students, they were conducting some research, and that research, maybe it's still going on, who knows. For that we need to go and study about present perfect tense. Let me write you some more examples. Many students were feeling depressed in February. In sentences like these, the use of past continuous tense implies that the activity may have continued after the time period mentioned in the sentence. It may have stopped, we don't know, because something was going on in the past. Many students were feeling depressed in February. It was February, it was sort of cold and people were feeling depressed. So something was going on in the past. Whether it was interrupted or maybe it is still going on present time, we don't know. Something happened in the past and maybe it is still going in the present time. We don't know about that. Maybe it stopped. We don't know. In other words, maybe, students kept feeling depressed after February, or maybe they felt better by March. I don't know about that. So it's February and maybe students felt better at the end of the March, or maybe they felt even more depressed towards the end of the March. So something was going on in the past for continuous time at a specific time. For this we use past continuous tense. Now let's go to the third form of the past tense, and that is past perfect. Good. Past perfect. Now we come to the past perfect tense. First of all, let's learn about the form. The form is pretty easy. It is had plus past participle. In other words, we call it a V3. So had plus past participle. That is the form. Let's learn about the uses. So how is the past perfect tense used? The first use is when describing a series of actions, we use past perfect to describe the action that happened first. So this is the rule. When describing a series of actions, we use past perfect to describe the action that happened first. So something that happened in the first should be described by using a past perfect tense. Let me give you an example, or maybe few examples. I had gone home, then I read a book and fell asleep. This could be one example. Let me write another one also. The lawyers had slowly worked towards an agreement that was acceptable to everyone. So this is another example. The first one is I had gone home, then I read a book and fell asleep. The lawyers had slowly worked towards an agreement that was acceptable to everyone. So if you look at this, first this happened, after this happened, and afterwards falling asleep thing happened. So first they worked and that was acceptable to everyone. So the first thing that happened should be described by using past perfect tense. Number one should be described by using which tense? Past perfect tense. So number one should be described by using the past perfect tense. I had gone home. So going home is the first priority, or maybe the first action. And then I read a book, reading is second action, and falling asleep and fell asleep. Falling asleep is the last action. The lawyers had worked towards an agreement that was acceptable to everyone. Then they printed the agreement and gave it to their clients. You see, first, working towards an agreement was the first thing, so we use the past perfect tense. After that, printing and giving and everyone agreeing, that was other event, so we use the past tense, simple past tense. Let's go to another use. The use number two of past perfect tense is when you are describing two past actions that took place the same time. You can use past perfect tense to describe the shorter action. So shorter action is described by which tense? By past perfect tense. Like I said earlier, the longer should be explained by past continuous tense. So the longer action can be described by using simple past tense or past continuous tense. For example, let me write one example. She had burned herself while she was cooking dinner. You see, this is similar to the previous one. So burned is American. We can write burnt for British use. So she had burnt herself while she was cooking dinner. The longer action is described with past continuous tense, while the shorter action is described with past perfect tense. Or we can simply say she burnt herself while she was cooking dinner. By using simple past tense also, we can explain the shorter action. That is to say that when we are describing about two past actions that took place roughly at the same time in the past, we use past perfect tense or simple past tense to describe the shorter action. Like in this example, burning oneself while cooking dinner. So we have two different events. The first one being the shortest, we use the past perfect tense, while the second one being the longest one, we use the past continuous tense. That is the main idea. Now we come to use number three, a past perfect tense. So it is describing a past action that was finished in a specific time period. You see, describing a past action that was finished in a specific time period. Let me write you one example. Something happened in the past and something was done. So let's see. The science team, remember the science team from past continuous tense? The science team had conducted research as recently as last month. Another example could be many students. Remember that sentence? Many students had felt depressed in February. So that was another example, right? So had conducted is the past perfect, had felt depressed is the past perfect tense. So why do we use the past perfect tense? Why not simple past tense? Because we are describing an action that finished. We don't know whether it is going on right now. Because in the last example, if you remember, let me show you the last example. So if we look at this example, this was the last example, right? Many students were feeling depressed in February. Something was going on in February. It went up to March, maybe stopped, or maybe went forward. We don't know. And now let's look at our current example. Now in this example, many students had felt depressed. Something happened and stopped. For sure, because something is finished already. Describing a past action that was finished in a specific time period. That's why we use past perfect tense, not past continuous tense. You see? Now let's go to the last form of the past tense, and which is called past perfect continuous. Past perfect continuous. First of all, let's understand the form. It is had plus been plus verb plus ing. Let's understand the uses. So we have only one use. We come to the ninth use. For this, the first use. Describing an action that began further in the past than other actions but overlaps with actions that began later. You see, this is the example. So this is the use. Describing an action that began further in the past than other actions but overlaps with actions that began later. So if this sounds too confusing, let me give you one example. This use is a little complicated. So I need to first write an example. Here's an example. I had been eating dinner when I thought about what I would do on the weekend. So this is the example. I had been eating dinner when I thought about what I would do on the weekend. Now imagine you began to eat dinner, and then while you were eating, you began to think about what you would do on the weekend. You would use the past perfect continuous to describe the action that started earlier, that is, eating dinner. Eating dinner, that action obviously started earlier, but happened partly at the same time as an action that started later, thinking about what I would do. So this is action number 2. Happened almost what we call it parallelly. So these are parallel actions, we can call them parallel actions. Now imagine, keep on imagining, thinking about what you would do on the weekend, right? So that the action that had started later would be described by using simple past tense, while the action that had happened earlier would be described by the past perfect continuous tense. Does that make any sense? Think about it. Does it make any sense? It's like this. Suppose you want to describe a series of actions, right? Now you suppose there's one action that started before the other actions but continued even after the next action begins. Very complex, you say? You say it's very complex. It is not. So once again, let's try. First action was eating dinner, and you thought about what you would do on the weekend. Then you went on eating. So first you thought about you were eating something. Then you thought about what you would do on the weekend. Then you went on eating. So eating, meanwhile thinking. So for this eating part we use the past perfect continuous tense, and for thinking part we use simple past tense. Now seems easy, right? Now you would notice that the past tense is a little bit complicated than the present tense. Slightly complicated but not so difficult, you see. Past tense is entirely different compared to the present tense. Then we have something called the future tense, and that's a whole lot of different story because it is entirely different again. So that is the end of today's class. Now let me give you some homework. Your homework would be write 5 sentences each write 5 sentences each of 4 different kinds of the past tense. That's your homework, and that's pretty easy. All you have to do is write 5 sentences each, you see, of the 4 different kinds of the past tense. That's your homework. 5 sentences. How many sentences altogether? I bet you're good at maths, so let's do a quick maths. 5 multiplied by 4 equals 20. Excellent. So 20 sentences altogether. How many? 20 sentences. Oh, don't gasp and say, that's too many. That's not too many. Only 20 sentences. Now, if you have any questions about the explanations and examples that I just gave you, don't be shy. Feel free to write us at learning@deerwalk.edu.np. Thank you.